The new book, Land to Lots, written by Carter Froelich, is now available to purchase on Amazon. Get your copy of Land to Lots, How to Borrow Money You Don't Have to Pay Back, and launch master planned communities today. Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Hey everyone, this is Carter Froelich, and welcome back to the Land to Lots podcast. Today is part 2 of our 2-part series with Randy Rollo. If you missed part 1, be sure to listen to that episode first. Now, on to the episode. And our whole idea and what we approached Randy with, and he was willing to be the pioneer in Texas to say, yes, let's do this. I'm willing to kind of bet on you guys and to see if we can accelerate the future mud proceeds into my pro forma now. And that really ultimately is what we ended up doing, Randy, isn't it? I mean, it worked, and you were willing to take a bet on us.
Well, it's dialing for dollars. I think that's kind of the way my brain thinks. You got to think outside the box. You got to don't give up. You got to find solutions to your problems.
Yeah.
And make them work. So, Carter, we did look at monetizing, the mud bonds, but in history and around how it's done, I don't know it any different. Many developers that I know and respect do monetize their mud bonds. It makes business sense sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Especially when, in my case as well, too, is I got other projects I'm trying to fund, right or wrong or indifferent. You still got to have money to do that. Other big developers that I know, we're going to monetize their mud bonds so they can buy another piece of land, and start this process all over again. And that's kind of our goal as well. And the more equity you put of your own, the better negotiations you get. Monetizing mud bonds, like you said, the first deal out of the bag, you sit there and you go, they're 12 or 16% to monetize the bonds. In most cases, you go, that's higher than heck. I ain't going to do that. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm gonna wait it out, especially if you have an investor who's waiting on those bonds to be reimbursed too.
Yeah,
he's not in a hurry. You have to sell your first bond in a normal situation. You can't do anything early, regardless of how much ground you have or how much money you spend. You're unable to monetize those mud bonds until the first mud bond sold, which could be 2, 3, 4 years down the road, depending on how big the bond you're asking for. As far as the price, I'm going, what? I'd love to sell a mud bond for 12%. My lender's charging 14.
Yeah.
And today it probably went up to 14 and a half, but anyway, those are kind of things that make you look twice.
Yeah.
There's no question going into this deal, we were the first ones to try it, and it was a drill. It took a lot of work on a lot of people to make it happen, and it came down to the wire.
Yep.
There were goals that I needed to meet. To the listeners out there, Carter and his team did an excellent job every day. The team at Piper Sandler did a wonderful job, putting this deal together too, and all the lawyers involved in it. They earned their money. It's been phenomenal, but I also just want to mention the support we had from our mud attorneys, ABHR. They really pulled it together. This is a new program, as everybody knows, but they really understand the situation we're going through, and they understand their developers and how challenging it is right now for us to, obtain the proper financing to keep our projects, going together. We couldn't have done it without them. I mean, they just did heroic efforts of working, tirelessly to, make this thing, make this happen. So I just want to put a shout out to them and how much they're appreciated.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Randy. I mean, this is the first one that was done, and they stepped up, and they were there, and they were great to work with. And like you said, without them, this would have never happened. So, yep, shout out to ABHR. And the thing that I've got to also say is you and your team, I mean, you came ready to get down to business. I mean, your records were absolutely impeccable. And as a result of that, made our job so much easier too. So kudos to you and your organization and everybody, Grant and Gary and just Sarah and everybody on the team that made this happen. So, Made it easy.
So, it's good people like to be around good people. So it was a good story to tell. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, no. And so at the end of the day, what were some of the unexpected outcomes or lessons learned as a result of going through this process? Because, literally we all, and that's the underwriters, the developer, all the consultants, we were building the airplane as we were flying it. So we did learn some lessons on what to do differently next time, and we're in the process of doing that. But what surprised you the most, Randy, on this process, or conversely, what kept you up up at night while this process was going through it? I think you alluded to it, meaning the ticking. We had a date certain we had to deliver the money by, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, it started off being attorney fees, but and again, it turned out to be good. But it was just like anything else. It's the challenges that are ahead. A lot of new people working together for the first time in different cities,
yep,
from Houston, Austin, your team in Phoenix and California, and Denver and Chicago, and all those things. And the time frame to get together, it took a lot of deal. But I think we did an excellent job of developing the roadmap of future
yep,
opportunities to do this.
yep.
The information and the details of your business plan was like, okay. I mean, it was like every detail that you can think about as far as your business plan and market studies and houses and square footage and who the builders are. And the underwriting had to be 110% certain of your ability to deliver,
Yep.
on your time frames that you're going to have your lots finished, home started, home sold, and your tax evaluation, appraisals, been able to do the money. And I think, I'm proud of our team that we had it together. It
Yep.
just took a lot of time, and it's going to take hours and hours and hours and hours, to understand this. But I think I'll be glad to share, with anybody who wants to understand what kind of preparation do you need to have. And
Yep.
I think if you're prepared for it, it'll go a lot smoother.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Randy. And there'll probably be some phone calls coming your way. So we'll make sure we leave your contact information in the show notes. Is there anything you would have done differently, knowing what you know now?
If you had time, I
Mhm.
think it's just you know, um, I was in a need to refinance. I was in a need to borrow more money. I needed a new loan. I needed the ability to stay the course, and I also bought another piece of land. So it's just like anything else, it's cash flow,
Yeah.
and what to do. And there's no, uh, I was at a point where I could stop for a while and not do anything and let the, build phase one and wait a while and see what happens. But I felt a real strong need to get lots on the ground, finish our amenity center, finish roads, do other things. We sold a school site, so a lot of stuff was going on. So I just said, we're not going to wait. We're going to go forward. Find a way to make it happen. So
Yep.
that's what pushed us down this way. We had to find other ways to make this thing work without giving up. So that's what we
Yep.
did. I mean, it's you have a goal, make it happen. Find a team that works with you. Partner with the right builders who understand that our goals is their goals, and I think that's the most joyful I get out of my business right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
It's having those relationships. The alternatives weren't looking good to me.
Yeah.
Of additional equity required, loan to cost ratios, equity guarantees, and those kind of things that were being put on me, and I just wasn't comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
So without this, it wouldn't be, you know, we'd be doing something else right now. But
Yeah. Yeah.
probably not putting on the lots right now either. So
And for our listeners, just a recap of the transaction. I know we've talked about it on previous episodes, but we issued the MUD Forward Funding Capital Appreciation Bond in the amount of $35.5 million. at a coupon rate of 7.5%. It was on a yield of 7.76%. But as a result of issuing that bond, approximately $33.2 million was netted out to help retire the land loan, and then an additional 4.4 million of that of the 33.2 was used to complete the construction of the wastewater treatment plant, which was necessary to serve the lots in phase one and future lots. So it worked out really well, and I'll make sure that for our listeners we keep a transaction sheet so that you can refer to that as it relates to the highlights of this transaction that we're talking with Randy about. And also, I'll make sure that I leave Randy's contact information so you can take him up on his offer to, what worked, what didn't, and those kind of things. We talked a little bit on public financing in Texas, and obviously Lariat has a mud on it. But one of the other tools that you see utilized in Texas quite often is the PID, or the Public Improvement District, which differs from the MUD in that the PID is a creature of the county, of the city. It's controlled by the county or the city. And rather than issuing general obligation bonds secured by an ad valorem tax on the property contained within the MUD, it actually issues assessment bonds, which are secured by a specific lien on a specific piece of property based upon the special benefit received. And we're typically limited to a 3-to-1 value to lien ratio. So for our listeners out there, that's the difference between the two bond types. Randy, do you have a preference? PID, MUD, do you have a preference, one or the other, or are you agnostic?
I'm from Texas. This is how we've been doing it. So I'm a MUD guy. I mean, that's my typical answer.
Uh-huh.
But PIDs, in my opinion, are new. I mean, this whole public financing of tourist PIDs and all this stuff that you hear in Florida and California and all the other acronyms for whatever someone's doing wasn't really in my wheelhouse or my brain, or what. I didn't learn that. So first time I come across PIDs was, 5 or 6 years ago, more than that now. But, I was doing a project in Leander, Texas, and up and coming boom city, still is a good place to be. So I went to the city and said, I got this, 500 acres, and I'm going to do a master plan project in there, and this is what I want to do, blah, 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 blah. And utilities aren't available to me at this point, so I'd like to do a mud district, an in-city mud district. And I had pretty much support from council members. However, when I got in front of the city manager and all this, he goes, "We're not going to do muds anymore. We're doing PIDs." And I go, "Okay, thank you." I had to go home and Google what a PID was. I had no idea what a PID. So, or how it worked or any of that stuff. But lo and behold, that's the only way I could make this deal pencil with my investor partner. So let's do a PID. And that was more painful than doing this, bond sale for sure. But, you said it, Carter, it's controlled by the county or the city. You don't have control over it. And that's my concern. And granted, we're able to receive funds quicker, earlier. And I do believe it's a good process. The challenge is that it's controlled by somebody other than you, of when your funds can be released and when you get it. Early on, I think there was a lot of challenges with developers and cities understanding it, city council approving your check, those things. But I think over the course of time, they've all realized for their city to grow and for the towns around them to survive, that a PID's necessary. So, I've done a couple of PIDs, and I think they were very purposeful, and we retrieved the goals that we wanted out of them. I think for a developer, if you're able to, handle a mud district, it gives you the ability to offset some of your cost that you may not have bought the project because it wouldn't pencil without it. Stuff. So the larger deals, the more complicated structure, which seems to be the ones I buy,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so it's like, but I don't have a preference. It's kind of what works
Yeah.
where.
Yeah. And to some degree, it depends on the availability of utilities and, where you're located, et cetera. The other one that we see starting to be used more and more is the municipal management district, or the MMD, where the developer does have control, and we have the ability to issue both geo and assessment bonds, and so we're starting to see that used more and more, especially with the legislature having just recently changed it so that we can form MMDs through the TCEQ. And we'll probably be talking about that on a later episode. But Randy, I really appreciate your insight from a user of both, and that's important to our listeners. Is there anything else I should have asked you, and I that but didn't, as part of this conversation, that you would like to add to the record and let our listeners know?
Carter, I've already been approached by a couple of people that's asked me about it, and I said, "How big is your deal?"
Yep.
If it's a 200-acre deal and you hadn't got a mud farmed on it, and you're at the beginning stage, you're way ahead of yourself.
Yep.
I don't think that unless it's significant, the cost of it, the time, the energy, and the reality of it coming together, you need to have your game together pretty good.
Yep.
But if you got a big project, regardless if you got the money or not, I think it's a good idea to look at this with how things are, getting in our financial world right now. But would I do it again? I do it again. If the time comes, and I think it might make sense. Depends where you are in your project.
Yep.
And what's your money costing you right now. But the challenge was getting it set up, Carter.
Yeah.
The decision was made. This is what I need to have in the ground. This is how much money I'm looking for, and how do I get there? One point I want to point out just came to my mind, Carter, when I first went down this deal, I was looking for $13 million.
Yep. I remember that.
Okay. And that's just, I need $13 million. I wasn't looking for a bigger number than that. But, if you sit there and look at the cost of money and how things were, I was able to, double that, pretty much because of what the infrastructure and where we were. Again, clean books, builders under contract,
Yep.
things, it all lined up for this particular case. So I wouldn't suggest, putting it in your business perform a day one before you buy a piece of land.
Yep. Agreed.
So stick to the course, use it if you need it, and have it available. And I do think that it's a great opportunity. And I think as it's performed more and more and more, it'll get easier and better for everybody.
Yeah. And Randy, I want to thank you for bringing that up, because we've also had some folks call us saying, "Hey, I'd like to really do a forward funding before, I want to use this to get the money to put in the ground." And as it relates to where we're at right now in the market, that's just not going to happen. To Randy's point, we really need projects and kind of the sweet spot right now, larger projects with significant mud eligible infrastructure in the ground, the mud formed, the bond elections held, the board appointed, and in a perfect world, the builders either have taken down lots and or land and are in the process of developing their lots. And so we have a good, meaningful story to tell the bond investors. So Randy, I really want to say thank you again. I appreciate you trusting us. I always appreciate our friendship and getting together and talking over a big steak down in Austin, and those are going to keep on continuing for sure. Seeing you at Urban Land Institute or ULI. And for all of our listeners, if you're not involved in Urban Land Institute, I really encourage you to get involved. It's a great way to meet quality, forward-thinking people with the same mindsets, individuals that really want to create meaningful places for people to live, work, and recreate. And obviously, Randy's one of those. And even though we're not developers here at Launch, it's something we care deeply about and want to work to always be pushing the envelope and making the places that we finance better. So, Randy, anything else you'd like to conclude with before we sign off?
No, Carter, I just want to thank everybody involved in this deal. It was stressful. I was asked, how do I feel after it's done? I said, well, I feel like I fell off the Empire State Building and landed on my back. I woke up, I shook it off, and I said, man, I'm alive, but damn, am I sore?
Yeah.
So but it was worthwhile. It gave me a boost. It gave our company a boost, and it allowed us to do other things and think forward versus chasing your tail. But it's been a good experience. Thanks again.
Yep. Thank you, Randy. And to our listeners, I hope you found this interview with Randy Rollo inspiring. And please feel free to look at the show notes for Randy's contact information, our deal sheet as it relates to the Lariat Forward Funding Capital Appreciation Bond. And if you found this episode inspiring, we encourage you to pass it on to your team members and or any other interested parties you may have. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcast to never miss a new episode.